All right, guys, welcome back to the Dream 80 series and phase 2. In this week's episode, we're going to talk about the farm and what we found for current quality that the farm had. We knew this area really well. You know, this area it's in Iowa. It's in the big hill country. It's not uncommon in this area to see a field full of 100 deer. And it's not, you know, in the dead of winter when that happens. So a lot of herd pressure, a lot of herd stress, a lot of animal units in this area, and a lot of really good genetics. Diverse genetics of, you know, drop tines and mass and splits and big frames and not that we don't have a lot of spindly bullies that are, you know, 7-year-old 130-inch 8-pointers, but there is a lot of great genetic opportunity. So our goal definition for this farm was to grow a 200-inch deer, make the farm as best as it possibly can be, make it, you know, the center of the neighborhood, and give it everything that we can to enhance the habitat, the food, the security, the water, you name it, make it as best as we can. So we wanted to establish the current quality and decide what that was. We knew what our goal was. So current quality, first trail cam pulls and getting cards back. We knew this area had some Boone and Crockett deer in it. Driving around in the summer, looking at soybean fields in the late summer, we saw some big, beautiful deer in this area, right close. We knew that it was a really, really great area in our research for this property. So that, you know, we knew what potential it had for sure, based on the neighborhood and defining our target areas. This is one of the target areas where this property ended up being. But on this specific property, the first trail cam card pulls and mobile picks were a lot of does, really high numbers of bucks and does. I mean, we had really great age structure from 1.5 to 2.5, 3, 4, and we had a couple of really nice bucks in velvet. Then we had one that was just a bully. He was a 145. 150-inch 10-pointer, huge body all through the summer. On that property, you know, we knew that we had really good diversification. It wasn't like there was, you know, just does or just young bucks. We knew we had good age quality. We were really happy with you know, the first year of just watching. And there was times that I, during the hunting season, went out there and didn't even bring my bow. I just wanted to watch. And having a box blind or some kind of vantage point way off is one of my favorite things to do. And bring a spotting scope from the truck or from the buggy window, or just glassing from a high point or a box blind or tree stand. Even during the hunting season, during the rut, watching how the deer are moving through the property, seeing what the quality is, running a bunch of trail cameras, and if it's legal in your area, before or after the season, you know, you can call a conservation officer. They are wonderful about answering questions and telling you what you can do, what you can't do, and it's always the best thing to do. But if it's legal and you can put out any kind of bait to bring them in to get pictures of those deer where you can't see them, if it's a super secluded property and it's not a place that you can get on a high vantage point, that's also a really good idea to try to gain inventory and see what you got out there to deal with currently. A couple things that I want to talk about in this week's episode is the documented plan going towards what your established goals are for the property is so important to make sure you keep yourself on track with that, revisit it. Also, a really important thing is to document that with pictures on your phone. If you see a tree, you see a scrape, you see a rub, using a program on your phone where you can document where that was, so you can go back and put it on, pull up your photos and see that there was a big deer on camera over here on this specific date, and it was a one-off, and that might be a future opportunity. Documenting different projects before and after, so you know what it looks like, and what you learned from it. So I always have a notebook for a farm or a cloud-based account for the trail camera pictures instead of a thumb drive or something that can be deleted. I think documenting the deer, the progress that you're making in the property, maps, pin drops, all that sort of thing, because you forget. I can't tell you how many things I've done on a property, and it's like, what kind of trees did we plant there? Were they, you know, male or female variety? Did we fence this? Did we do that? And you think, well, I did that project. That's not that hard to remember that you planted, you know, pear trees here or persimmons or whatever it may be. You will forget, and you'll forget about deer, especially that came through that might not live there, and they passed through for a couple days, and you forgot about them. The mistake that I've made in the past is not not caring about that deer because it's too small when he passed through, and then realizing that he came through the next year, and Mary and I got a photo of him, but he came by 2 years later, and then you get a picture on those same 3 days 2 years later, and you have a giant rolling through the property, and you didn't even know he was there passing through. But that documentation and going back and revisiting that before you get started on that year's projects, you know, into the summer before you start into food plots, into the fall before you start into hunting, into the winter before you go shed hunting and start walking around doing more habitat work. If you go back to that point where you documented the years previously, you will be better off figuring out what you need to do or what you want to focus your time, attention, and money on for that year's projects. Another thing that I've learned on properties is I haven't been really great at recruiting deer from other properties. I've been way more successful growing the deer that do live there. So the deer that do live there, giving them a sanctuary, giving them food, giving them just the perfect place that they never want to leave. The big deer that we've killed on properties that we own, they've been grown on those properties, not necessarily recruited. And I know there's a lot of information about that out there and people that know far more than I do. But in my experience buying farms and hunting in Iowa and doing that personally, I've had 99% of my success not be, you know, happened by luck. It was the hard work went into this for this specific intention, for this specific goal, and then that animal, we watched him from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever the progress of the age structure was. The majority of the bucks that we end up shooting, we know that they're a mature bully that needs to come out of the herd, like this buck that I was talking about. And we have sheds from them, and we're growing them in time, and that really makes it more rewarding too when you grow a deer from 3 years old or 4 years old up to 6 or 7 and get the opportunity to harvest him after you've known him for those years and gotten pictures of him and seen how he acts and named him and seen how his personality is and how different that is. It's like having a pet where you almost don't want to hunt the deer, but it's really neat to have that entire timeline just to experience that and to have their sheds and see them year after year. So back to the 80, we had one bully. It was a 145, 50-inch 10-pointer, and he needed to go. His ears were pinned back in photos all the time. He, after the velvet came off, he was chasing bucks, and we noticed the deer numbers going down because of that, because we knew what the deer numbers were that were established, and they were declining because this buck was a bully. My wife Shannon went in and made short work of that buck and shot him on the first night she went in and hunted him, and we knew right where he was, and he came out, and she ended up harvesting that buck. As soon as we got that buck out of there, it was about 7 to 10 days, and all these bucks that we had on camera previously started filtering back in and showing back up. Whether that was because of the time of year or because that deer was gone, I'm not 100% sure on that, but when she shot that buck, the farm was better because of it. So we've had years where we have 2 or 3 of those bucks on a farm, and as soon as you remove them from the herd, now you have some of those deer that maybe have spent year 2, 3, 4 on that property starting to come back. And I think they travel through there and they realize that bully's there, and I'm not gonna go frequent that property or live there because they have the best habitat under wraps. So removing those bucks as well as removing some does consistently. I think one big thing that I learned, especially from Bill Winke, was if you're gonna go in and let's say you have 50 does on a property, if you're going to go in and shoot 2, that isn't really doing much for your herd. And especially if you're doing that during the late season, those does might not even be from that property. So again, looking back at your goals and looking back at the documentation that you have can be so beneficial when you have established goals and you know what the numbers need to be reduced to, or know what deer needs to be removed from the property specifically. Defining those goals, staying on that track record, documented along the way, will teach you a whole bunch that you need to consistently be learning about that property and how to make it better when you have the documentation of seeing the results from some of your actions. So that was the current deer quality that we had on the farm. We have a lot of food on that farm this year, and in the late season now there is just a ton of deer that have showed up that we're not sure if they are being recruited and maybe will stay in the future, or if they'll leave after their sheds are dropped. But there is a lot of deer that have showed up because of the food, and we're really hoping that we are able to retain some of those deer into the future. But we're really excited to get out and shed hunt this property and see which ones are living there and where their bedding areas are, and see if we can find some more big sheds. Thanks for watching this week's episode of the Dream 80 series. If you like what we're doing, give us a thumbs up, and we'll see you next week.